Welcome to the Thinklings podcast, a conversation where good thoughts help renew the mind with the Word of God. I'm Charlie Carter, and I'm here with Tim Little and Andy Stearns. Let's jump into the conversation. Welcome to the Thinklings podcast, the Christmas episode. What's the name for it? The Chronicles of Christmas.
Chronicles of Christmas.
Episode 2, because it's the second time we've done it. So here's what we're going to do in this episode. We are going to go around the table and we're going to just give you a list of books that if you've got free time over Christmas, which the students listening to this, you probably do have some free time over Christmas, or maybe the rest of you have time off from work and you have all that stuff. Maybe time in a car, you could get an audiobook of something. We're just going to give you broadly Christmas book recommendations. And and we're just going to do that the whole time. And then when we're done, we're done. And Santa Claus is coming to town.
Yes.
Santa is coming. We're not going to tell you who Santa is, but he's going to pop in. He's going to come down the chimney at some point.
We need a chimney
Santa.
in our recording.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Santa. Yep. Okay, I got you.
So with that in mind, and Santa's going to give us a book recommendation
He's not
too.
Santa. He's not that big.
He's not, but he's jolly.
He's jolly.
He has a Santa-like demeanor.
Isn't Santa teaching like a class right now?
Santa is upstairs teaching a class right
That's
now.
right. Okay.
Ooh.
Yes.
That's a good hint. Actually, it's a pretty broad hint. So
Yes. He's not that broad though.
two points.
So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Can I? Does it matter?
It does not.
As long as we go clockwise.
We
I'm
can
okay with it.
literally do
As long as
anything
go
we want.
clockwise. Listener, I don't think Tim could ever handle us going counterclockwise.
Oh, I've done it. It's really hard though.
Okay,
Like-
go for it. Christmas read
so
number 1.
Christmas read number 1. I think this may be a book we featured on the podcast before. It's called Hearers and Doers by Kevin Vanhoozer, A Pastor's Guide to Making Disciples Through Scripture and Doctrine. And listener, we're coming into a new semester. Maybe you'd even be interested in taking a class. I would encourage you to consider that. I'm teaching discipleship in the local church this next semester. This is one of my textbooks, Hearers and Doers by Kevin Vanhoozer. I also have a Refresh Your Hebrew class. So if you learned Hebrew and have forgotten it, this class was made for you. So feel free to reach out to us. And you can take a look at some of the other course offerings at faith.edu. So what about this book, Hearers and Doers? Well, we talk a lot about the imagination on the podcast. We talk about fiction books. I used to not be a fiction fan at all. I thought it was a waste of time. I didn't like fiction. I figured if I'm going to read something, I'm going to read something that's true, nonfiction. And I've kind of done an about face on that whole idea. Vanhoozer has strengthened that view. Basically, the Christian life is about imagining and understanding how the scriptures interact with my life. So he talks a lot about imagination. On page 56, he writes, the imagination is a cognitive faculty, a kind of thinking, which is precisely why Jesus taught by telling stories. Okay, it's a fascinating thing to think of when we consider writing fiction and the role of the imagination and thinking in discipleship. The story resonates with us. It is literally Ecclesiastes 12. It is the wise man taking the truth of God's word and putting it and crafting it in a way that resonates with the audience. And so I'm going to continue reading here on page 56. Learning scripture and theology similarly require imagination. And the purpose of an illustration, the purpose of a story, is to help your reader connect a biblical principle, a truth from God's word, to their lives. And what does that require? Imagining. So the whole idea of the imagination as being an important component in Christian discipleship, Vanhoozer kind of makes a strong case for it. Now, as you're going on your Christmas break, the temptation, particularly students, well, for all of us, when we have a little extra time, is to turn on the television or YouTube. The TV's getting a little obsolete, but
The screen. Let's say the screen.
okay, and I would encourage you to not, or at least to severely limit it. I've known some students who've watched entire seasons, like seasons plural, of these TV series, and I was trying to add up the number of hours they must have spent watching that TV series. Okay, when you're watching those TV series, what are you doing?
Well, they call it amusement.
Amusement.
You're not musing, that's for sure.
And you are shaping your imagination, and you're shaping it in a wrong way. So I want to just read a little snippet out of Hearers and Doers here, page 209. The sobering truth is that much of what is going through our heads is not the story of Jesus, but some other story. I fear, for example, that many people spend more time viewing videos than reading scripture. In February 2017, YouTube announced that people around the world watch 1 billion hours of content on the site every day. Okay, I would encourage you this Christmas season to unsubscribe from YouTube, unsubscribe from Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu. I mean, what other ones are there? They've got like a gazillion. Apple TV or whatever they are. Okay, Amazon. It would be great to cancel your Amazon Prime membership and do your book buying through Faith Bookstore or some other smaller retail. Don't feed the machine. All right, so I consider that and turn off the screen. Get into your Bible. Have you ever thought of having a family Bible study? There's one thing that I'm hoping to do over our Christmas break is to open up God's Word with my children and to study through the birth narratives. It's great to have an Advent book. I would encourage you even more to just go to the Bible and walk through the Magnificat of Mary. As Protestants, we've really lost a theology of Mary. And I think Christmas is a great time to think through who Mary is biblically and to understand that she is like the most, what's the word in Luke that talks about her? She is the most significant of women. It's not that word, but
Is it favored?
favored
Who are you?
woman. Isn't that fascinating that she was the woman that gave birth to God? All right, here's and Doers.
And you're like, what's that word that's used to describe Mary? I was like, virgin?
Yeah, there's that one too. Not in the archetypal sense.
Yeah. Not in that sense. Okay, so mine has Christmas in the title. Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol by Charles
Oh,
Dickens.
that's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I have always known of the story. I can remember as a kid watching the movie. I can remember like my buddies in high school or what got me into the Muppet Christmas Carol. I remember watching that with them. And then I was in A Christmas Carol as a drama this past fall. And again, you can fall into the trap of, oh, let's watch the movie, but it's a book. And even I was watching a Christmas movie last night, and I was like, this is based on a book. It was The Grinch. But how even a kid reading a Dr. Seuss book is probably at least equal in profit than to them watching the movie. And even something as silly as Dr. Seuss and it's Grinch, But so A Christmas Carol, I think we've in previous episodes discussed its theological message and tried to, smooth out the rough edges of its social messages to maybe just say, Christmas is meant to be thankful and with family, and you should be thankful for what you have. And Scrooge is not. He's a greedy miser and never wants to give. And there's people who are much less fortunate than he, and they're very content in their lives. And he learns from their example. And so there are some good things there. And if you've never read it, I have on good authority that you can buy it at the Faith Bookstore because I have purchased it at the Faith Bookstore. There are multiple copies, and there's actually, I'll come back on my next book to this book because it goes together. But so my first one is buy A Christmas Carol and read it. You will enjoy reading the classic from Charles Dickens.
See, I should put that on my list because I have not read it, and I'm very intrigued by it. After seeing yours, and then I still haven't seen the Muppet Christmas Carol. Dr. Newman was quite disappointed in me, by the way. That's one of his favorites.
You have seen the Charlie Sawyer Christmas Carol.
Oh boy.
Yes, I have. That's exactly.
Slightly, it's very Muppety in his
It was great.
presentation.
It was great.
It was so good.
So to my left is Santa's chair, and shall we say the cookies and milk are still here because he's not. So we'll just pass on from Santa and go to Andy.
All right. So I keep forgetting. Well, I don't know if we said this, but I keep forgetting that this is supposed to be a Christmas. These are supposed to be Christmas titles. I thought it was just like books
Christmas-
to read over Christmas.
Broadly Christmas, but I mean during the Christmas season,
Okay.
it
Oh.
serves the reason that
Okay.
someone would want to read Christmassy things in the Christmassy season.
So here we. Okay. So I'm going to recommend a book.
This is when we twist all of our books and make them
Exactly.
Christmassy.
Remember last year?
Oh, it was so
Yeah.
good.
Horrendous.
Yours especially was intriguing. So this one is a book by John Frame called Christianity Considered, a Guide for Skeptics and Seekers. You might say, well, what does that have to do with Christmas? Well,
Christianity.
that's right, Christianity. And
Jesus
Oh boy.
He's-
was born.
so Frame is a presuppositional apologist. And so sometimes presuppositionalists get the rap that they don't use evidences or arguments. And he said it's really a shame because there's nothing wrong with that. Presuppositionalism is not just not using those things. It isn't actually not using those things. So he says, I want to give an attempt at making a book with a bunch of arguments for Christianity. So I will say that this book is full of presents for the Christian or the seeker.
Oh
so
boy.
he's got that's as close as I can get. He's going to walk through.
That was not bad.
I thought it was pretty good. You know, I don't know if it's 24 here arguments.
I am regularly impressed with both of you in your ability to fly off the cuff and make junk up like that. It's just like blows me away because I'm so boring.
Well, it's just when I'm on the cuff that it gets really scary. So this book, he's going to walk through different elements. Okay, here's some of the chapter titles. Why Believe in God, Right, Wrong, and God, Right, Wrong, and Believing. Everything is evidence for God. Does God speak to us? A holy book. He's going to walk through various facets of life, and he's going to ask, how does that fit with a different worldview? And some of these are going to be strong arguments for Christianity. All of them, actually, but some are going to be straight up arguments. Some are going to be like, hey, you can't believe in this without assuming Christianity. So I think it's an interesting book. And I would recommend it if that's something you're interested in. So I would say this is niche. If you like apologetics, or you want to go into the philosophy route, or you're looking for something to make you think. But also, I mean, you guys are looking at this. This is not a long. Look at that. That's not a big book for apologetics. 140 pages. It's tiny. Tim, how would you describe this book to the reader?
Small.
Small. There we go. So I would say Christianity Considered.
I
See,
also would say it's published by Lexham Press.
I know
so
he missed it.
Right there, he set you up
I teed you up.
for
Tim.
the pun. How would you describe this? Little.
small.
He still says small. Come on.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Oh, sorry. I hit the table. Sorry, listener. I just threw my book on the table. You probably heard that.
My turn.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going.
You're the one that requested clockwise.
I did.
And
All right,
also, Charlie put both his hands in the air toward you, which I think is universal for your
My turn.
next.
All right, so I am. This is a book I'm hoping to read this Christmas. Whoo!
This is not the Summer Reads episode, Tim.
Whew. I have Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien. Have you guys read this?
I have. Well, okay, I haven't read it. Is it the thing you actually read? Like,
It's his letters to his kids.
yeah. So like the one that I have is more so like you're just looking at the images of the things.
Yeah,
it's
they-
not like a.
Go ahead, you first.
No, go ahead.
No, that's what I was like. I flipped through it and I was like, oh, that's cool. And they're like telling about the thing,
Mhm.
but it's not like an actual. It is in a sense. It's like a story that he was doing with his kids, like a progressive thing. But as you read through the book, it's not like you're reading a story. You're like reading about Tolkien doing this thing. So I
Right.
kind of like flipped through, looked at the pictures, read a couple captions.
It looks interesting.
Yeah.
Sad story. So at our Wednesday night ministry, our kids ministry, it was like a dress up night. So my daughter dressed like the star. It was like Christmas theme. So Evan went as a shepherd, Abby went as a star. I made this really cool star face thing for her.
Yeah.
And she won in her age group for costumes. And so she got to get a prize. And the director of our kids ministry bought a box with prizes. And then when he opened the box, it was full of books. And she picked Father
Letters.
Christmas.
Letters from Father
And
Christmas.
I was so excited. And then she looked at it and we're like, oh yeah, you probably. So Tim's like, you can exchange that for something different. In my mind, I'm like, oh, Dad could have got a prize. So she got something else. Oh, she got one of the CCEF children's books. It was actually really good.
So Letters from Father Christmas, might be a good read for you to go through with your kids. I have not read it. I want to read. I want to get a little more familiar with it. It is facsimile copies of the actual letters, including like the envelopes, how he would be like from the North Pole, and
Yeah.
my dear John, and he writes about whatever Christmas is like. And talks about just random details. I thought it was an extremely imaginative and creative way to love your children. And of course, this is before Santa Claus was the American Santa Claus. This would have been J.R.R. Tolkien, so think 30s, 40s. And I think he stopped writing them in the 50s, something like that. So, Letters from Father Christmas. That's my second pick.
A much less consumer-driven Santa is what you're saying.
That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
It is a different virtues being exalted, especially outside of America.
Right, and he was called Father Christmas.
Yeah, there's a little bit different of a emphasis there. Okay, book number 2, which I said will harken back to the first book. So the first book was A Christmas Carol, and there's actually an edition of Christmas Carol that Tim has in the bookstore. I bought one because I thought this was really neat. It actually has a supplementary. That's not the word I'm looking for. It supplements A Christmas Carol with other Christmas stories. And what piqued me right away was I was like, oh, look at that, because one of the stories in there was The Gift of the Magi, which was in short stories by O. Henry, which I recommended last year on Christmas Reads. And so that kind of got me down the rabbit trail of, I mean, okay, man, these short stories are actually pretty good. And I got the book off my shelf last week. And just what I love about these short stories is they are written really well. Henry's a great author. They all have a nice little fun twist to them. You'll find yourself like kind of knee slap humor sometimes, like, oh wow, okay, yep. And oh, that's like the endings will always kind of surprise you. And that's what he's known for. And so I'm recommending it again. I'm recommending the short stories of O. Henry. And specifically, I read one last week about a rich dad and his poor son, and his son has fallen in love, and his dad's like, well, can't you buy love, son? I'm going to spoil the story. Is that okay? They've been out for a while. I'm just going to spoil it as a means to like entice them to the other ones. You'll still enjoy the story.
You have full creative control here. You can.
So the dad's like, well, I've got all the money we need. Let's buy the love. And he's like, you can't buy the love. You can't buy the love of this girl. You can't. I need time to tell her my intentions and win her heart, like that type of discussion. And the dad's like, okay, well, good luck, and the son has like one short story. He's got one short time with the girl, but what happens is they're going to ride to watch, I think it's a play or a movie in New York, and this big like traffic ordeal happens, and they actually don't get to the play on time. And we hear Santa Claus is coming to town. He's walking in right now. I'm looking at him. So anyway, so what happens is the son who says he can't buy the love of the girl, he's like, I just need enough time with her to like win her heart. And then they get in the car and there's this huge traffic jam, and then the guy wins her heart and they get engaged, and then she moves off before, and like the next day the dad is like talking to, I can't remember the son or the mom. He's like, oh wow, yeah, that's awesome. Great job. And then later one of the dad's like employees comes in. And he's like, what's the bill? And he's like, oh, it's gonna be like $1,800 because like all of these trucks that you hired were like 50 a piece, and all of these taxis that you hired were like 10 a piece. So like the dad with his money orchestrated the traffic to get really bad so that the son would get all that time with the girl.
Horrendous.
And so it's like a really neat little spin, but it makes
cool.
you think like, well, can money buy love?
Oh, Song of Songs has something to say
Kinda
about that.
Didn't it?
Horrendous.
Anyway, so that's a short story of O. Henry there. I can't remember what it's called. It had a nice pithy title too. But yeah, I recommend that to read over Christmas break. So
money will buy you the wrong girl.
Maybe, yes.
That's the message of Song of Songs.
Oh my goodness. So first things first, Santa, you want to push that red button on your mic. There, now you're not muted. And yeah, that should be, so why don't you just, I haven't tested your audio yet, so why don't you just start talking?
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Oh yeah,
Christmas.
that was really loud. Let me turn you down a little
I can
bit.
speak softer.
We're progressing. Yeah, keep talking. Keep talking.
Oh, it's so good to be with you guys again.
Yeah,
It's good to see you again.
I love what you've done with the place.
it's a little brighter than the last time.
I have a funny story. You want me to tell it?
Yes, please.
So you guys have all these pictures of books up here, and it reminds me of a tie I got one time that had books on it. And so this was a really cool tie, and actually a friend of mine bought it for me as a present, and I wore it when Dr. Myron visited my church one time, and he fell in love with this tie.
Mm.
It was very bright though. And so I said, I was thinking about it that night, and he was there the next day, and I said, Dr. Myron, would you like this tie? And I just gave him my tie. I took it off my neck and I gave it to him, and he was just so thankful. So the next time I saw him, I was like, hey, how's that tie going? And he kind of sheepishly looked at me and he said, I destroyed it.
Oh,
And what happened is he took it and put it in tea.
I heard this.
He put it in tea and it disintegrated
Wow.
because he was trying
wow.
to change the color of it from like a brighter color to more of a faded color. And that's what your little environment here
The
reminds me of.
tapestries.
I think he told that class when I was taking a seminary systematic from him, because he had like a different tie, like books of the Bible maybe, and then we said something about it. He's like, well, I got this one, but he didn't say that.
Yeah.
He just said he put it in tea and it destroyed the tie.
Yeah, that was my tea. Or it was my tie.
Wow.
Oh, Dr. Myron, that guy. But anyway, so if you don't recognize the voice, we have the Lord of the Seminary,
Whoa.
Like Lord of the Rings, not Lord
Yeah.
over the earth.
like
You're not
one
the,
of the 9.
Yeah.
So
Wow, horrendous.
he's holding up his hand with the ring on it.
He
The
has
ring
it.
of power to the seminary. Dr. Doug Brown is with us.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. So, do you have a book for us for the Christmas reads?
Yeah, I actually brought a book down for my office.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed reading this book. It's by Bruce Ware. It is theological reflections of the man on the Christ humanity, I'm trying to. Okay,
That is
the
a
title of the
mouth-
book.
yeah.
It's kind of hard to read, but it says the man Christ Jesus, and then it's theological reflections on the humanity of Christ. So.
Oh.
So many books emphasize the deity of Christ, which they rightly should, but this really talks about Christ and his humanity in a different way, a fresh way, and really kind of talks about how he faced trials and temptations in his full humanity, and it really kind of helps you to understand some of those key verses in like Hebrews and like the temptations of Christ and things like that. To me, this is
Yeah.
kind of like solves a lot of those issues.
Because that's a fun thing this year, which we've already talked about, is I got to ask questions at some senior sim orals. They defend their theology.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that did come up when we get into either Christology, it should be in Christology, but I think it did come up in hamartiology. It was like, were the temptations of Christ real? And that gets into like, do you think he can sin? And then the question, well, if he can't sin, how are the temptations real? And the key is that he's tempted like we in a human sense. Why is it really hard for him to obey, even though he's impeccable, after 40 days without eating?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I go like 6 hours and I'm a grumpy goat. So, anyway.
Yeah. So it's a good. I mean, he's written a lot on the Trinity, but he has a couple books on Christ, and this one is kind of different because it just focuses on his humanity. And so I think at Christmas time, we tend to, rightly so, again, emphasize the redemption that Christ had on the cross, and those are awesome details of Christ's first coming. But to think about the incarnation and what that entailed, that Christ will be one of us forever, it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to meditate on this Christmas season.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's actually
So we were having a discussion earlier about the Christmas accounts in the Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
If you could describe Mary in one word, what would it be?
Oh, brother.
Not a brother.
You're
A sister.
horrendous.
that was so good.
A great way to
3
dodge.
points. At
Final
least.
answer is sister?
No, I would say.
One word. You have one word to describe Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Maybe
Can I
half.
use an adjective? Mm-hmm.
You can use whatever one word. Yeah.
Okay, I would say a thankful sinner.
A
So
thankful
you
sinner.
hyphenated
Mm.
it. Okay. I was looking for virgin. Virgin was the answer I was looking for. But
Favored was what I was going for.
Favored.
Tim
I like
couldn't think of
that.
favored.
I like favored.
Tim was like, "Yeah, what's that word that the Gospels use to describe Mary?" And I was like, "Virgin." Anyway,
Yep.
so let's keep going. Keep going around the table.
All right, so again, trying to connect these to Christmas.
I don't know how long he can stay. Can
Oh,
we let
wait,
him do
yes.
another one?
Because you're actually teaching a class.
I
He's on
am. I'm
break.
on break.
Is it how to harness the reindeer or how to fit down the chimney? What's your class title up there, Santa?
It is contemporary issues in youth ministry.
So good.
And
Yeah.
So
Check that naughty list.
Charlie can take anything and just like
So
go.
good.
Contemporary issues. It's, I saw a really cute video of this British kid who the dad was like, "You're not getting any gifts. You're on the naughty list." And he's like, "No, I'm not. No, take me off. I'm not on that list." Like, just like freaking out. Like he's not going to get gifts. He's like, "Santa doesn't know what he's talking about. I've been a good boy." He's like, "No, you haven't." "No, I'm not on the naughty list." It's so cute.
Hmm.
So go look that up. Anyway, you've got a couple more books.
Yeah, give us another one.
Oh, okay. So one of the books, these are actually two books that I use as textbooks for my class. So I came across this one fairly recently. I think I got it about 3 months ago, by Michael McGarry on a biblical theology of youth ministry. So if you've ever read a lot of youth ministry books, they tend to be very
Vapid,
just super
empty.
yes,
Weak?
just very
sorry.
weak, very maybe like they might sprinkle a Bible
Shallow.
verse.
Theologically rich.
Mhm. So this is, I would say this is a much better attempt at writing of this, and you have to understand, the whole concept of doing youth ministry now is being challenged because of the family integrated church movement, and so this guy is trying to incorporate what are the roles of the parents in line with what is the responsibility of the church to disciple people. And so I think does a good job. He does a good job of trying to balance that and trying to bring out some nuances in that area.
Is that sort of like a baby in the bathwater issue? You see the excesses of the bad types of youth ministry, and they want to jettison that. But then there's the biblical, like Proverbs, raising children, or like training children. Is that kind of what you think's going on there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, if I could say it like this, this is my own illustration. I haven't read this illustration, but I would say, welfare is supposed to be like a safety net, but welfare too often becomes a hammock.
That's
Ooh.
beautiful.
And
Oh,
so
that's
what
nice.
I think what the family integrated church, what family integrated church movement has basically said is that youth ministry should be there to help, but it's somehow replaced what parents are actually doing, and it's helped parents take time off where they really are not discipling their kids like they should anymore.
Okay.
And so it's enabled parents to drop the ball.
That's a really good illustration.
It is.
So then my third book it's on Proverbs. So
Oh, they have the same book.
we had the same book.
Yeah, I was going to highlight that one today too. Hear my son.
This
Well, now
is by
you can do it
Dan
at the same
Estes.
time.
Double time.
Hear my
Double
son.
team it right now.
No, you go ahead because
So
you
is
have
it-
more
so-
experience with it.
So I've been using this for youth ministry. So to me, Proverbs is
It's a
one of
Christmas
the
miracle.
only
It
books.
It was a.
I wish they could just see the faces
Just
of
think
like
how
Andy and
often I have to deal with this. Okay, you're just a guest.
I will
All
pray
right.
for you more.
Thank
You-
you. Appreciate
you
that.
get to. deal
That
with
was
I
a
love
Christmas miracle. Charlie is correct.
it. Yes.
So
Even Dr. Cole would agree with that one.
Well,
here's my quick summary because I do have to get going. So many people think of Proverbs as like a random assembly of wisdom statements, Proverbs. But really, the first 9 chapters of Proverbs are more like a series of lectures that Solomon has put together for his son. And you can actually exegete them in context and actually see them develop. And so what this book does, it focuses on Proverbs 1 through 9. And I took this as a Hebrew exegesis class, so I kind of really delved into it from that perspective as well. But Proverbs here, if I could kind of frame it like this, and even take my class sometime, is that Proverbs is the only book in the Bible that is directly written for teenagers, 2 and 4 teenagers, to youth. Now,
What?
we could
And
And the Song of Songs.
Sure,
And-
sure. So, but wisdom literature in general is geared towards teens. It's geared towards people who are adolescents. And so I'm like, why not design a whole youth class around Proverbs to try to help people see how, and this, maybe like different strategies and goals of how to actually reach young people.
Amen. I love it.
yeah, that's good stuff. I love that you guys brought the same book.
That is so good.
It is a
Great
Christmas
minds.
blessing.
It's
Great
a Christmas
minds.
blessing.
And Dan Estes is a good guy. He teaches at Cedarville. From a theological point of view, he's going to be very close to where we would be.
Yeah.
And he's starting to write commentaries and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I appreciate his contributions that he's making.
He's pumping out a lot of stuff right now.
Yes.
Articles, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, Proverbs. That wisdom corpus is his specialty. Hey, thanks for coming.
Hey,
Yeah, thanks.
honestly, Merry Christmas to you guys.
Oh,
There's
Merry
the coffee.
Christmas.
You can grab some.
Absolutely. All right,
Yes.
thank you guys.
Back
Thanks
up
for
the
letting me pop
chimney.
in.
This would be a great moment for a commercial break as we transition out of the Santa has come and back up the, Anyway. Well, I mean, if there was one sponsor to the Thinklings podcast, which we have none,
None.
We don't
I
have
mean,
a sponsor.
it'd be the Faith Bookstore. But
It would be.
I mean, I
Correct.
think we sponsor them. I don't think it's.
I do think so. I
So-
think we sponsor them.
So could we break the clockwise function of our table and let Tim talk about
Yes.
Hear My Son at
Yep.
the same time?
It's not really breaking it. It's skipping.
Oh, brother.
So we could do it.
Daylight savings time.
That's we'll
So,
fall back
Hear
in a
My
minute.
Son.
Yeah.
I actually have an extra book here, so I could just omit it completely. I'll just make it really quick. Basically, this is like a philosophy of education, and that's what Estes is doing, teaching and learning in Proverbs 1 through 9. Now, big fancy words, okay? Biblical theology of epistemology, the study of knowing. How do we go about learning and knowing? So I incorporate some of the information in my discipleship class, which is starting up again, okay, this January. And so I'm considering adding it as a textbook. Now, hearing Dr. Doug and how he uses it for his youth ministry class, I might reconsider that. But Hear My Son, teaching and learning in Proverbs 1 through 9. How do I go about teaching my children? There are tons of books that are teaching children, principles, blah, 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 blah. Well, we talk about books in business here and Chronicles of Christmas and books to read and everything. Well, what about actually going to the Bible? What actually about doing a Bible study? And as I even suggested in my first book, in doing a Bible study with your children, hey, guess what would be a great book to do a Bible study with your kids with? Proverbs 1 through 9.
Yeah.
You study through it with them, and then you teach them just from the scriptures themselves. Okay, so there's my 2 snippets on Hear My Son, teaching and learning in Proverbs 1 through 9.
Okay, daylight savings time. We'll fall back.
Ooh, that was good. I like that. That worked
Yeah,
really well.
that was fun.
And now he knows that that's why this is happening, and he can
I'm
still
gonna
figure
reach
it out.
over and mute Santa's microphone.
Oh, you got it.
That was fun. We need to do that more often. We just need to start an episode and just be like, "Hey, show up whenever you," and they just walk down. And
Seriously.
Doug will forever be Santa.
Oh yes, we got to get him a Santa hat.
Maybe
and
we
a
could get
Santa
Paul
beard.
on here that way.
What would Dan?
Oh,
be?
maybe that would finally get him on here. Ooh, I like that. Oh, Dan could do it.
What would?
He's the elf. He's an elf.
He is an elf. So we're gonna go. So we fell back and
Yep.
then we're gonna
To be known as the
spring
elf.
forward
Yes, that's right.
because we already did. So Andy
Yeah.
then me. Okay.
Yep. So I'm going to cover. So I'm trying to think a creative way to make this one a Christmas book. This is. So So when we talked about contentment and we talked about.
He showed the cover to us. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah. So we talked about the Pensée by Blaise Pascal, and what I'm going to recommend if you're interested in that sort of thing, this is a book by Peter Kreeft called Christianity for Modern Pagans. That sounds like a good Christmas title, doesn't it?
Well, isn't the way we celebrate Christmas all a bunch of pagan traditions anyway?
Oh, don't even Don't even no, it's
I mean,
not.
didn't the Easter Bunny hop into the forest and chop down the Christmas tree so he could put his eggs in it?
Spring. Oh, horrendous.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Okay.
You had one
Spring is
job.
the time of life. Right? Song of Songs. Come on.
What? Everything is Song of Songs here, people. Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I was just
Yeah.
like shooting off the cuff on Easter Bunny there. None of that is actually.
Yeah. No.
I'm sure there's some pagans out there that are like, oh yeah, the Easter Bunny went down and chopped down a Christmas tree, but that I was just joking.
Actually, it's interesting. Well, never mind. I won't go down that road. There's a book I want on the history of Christmas, but it talks about how it's actually not as pagan as people say. So, but I'll just leave it at that. So this is Blaise Pascal writes the Pensées, which is the book that he was in the middle of writing when he died, and people found the scraps. We talked about it 10 episodes ago or so. Peter Kreeft is an apologist and a writer, and what he does is it's kind of a guide to that book, and so he's got an introduction where he explains the book, and then he walks you through his ordering of the Pensées, and you'll get like one of the Pensées snippets, and then he'll have a commentary on it. I think that's maybe the best way to describe it. And I like it in that if you want to read it, he gives you context and annotation that's very helpful. Even like at the beginning, he's the one who I think I'm stealing a phrase from him, that Pascal was an Augustinian Catholic in that. And so Kreeft is the one who says he was too Catholic for evangelicals and he was too evangelical for Catholics. So it's a funny thing, but if you're interested in that from a couple episodes ago, this is a nice guide, and maybe this is a good time to read about it. It's going to talk to you about what you value in life, what you find interesting, what distracts you, where you go when you're bored, and during the Christmas season, some of those things might be part of what you're doing. So that's my loose tie into Christmas. Christianity for modern pagans. All right, let's spring forward in our daylight savings time.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry there.
I had Ordinary ready for you.
Okay, what's my next book? So
Ooh, you tell us.
I did see a meme on
Yes.
METS, Middle Earth Theological. I like saying society, but they say seminary.
Mets is so wonderful.
Yeah.
It's like a gift. It is
If you
a
haven't, if
gift.
you're on Facebook and you haven't followed that page and you're like a Lord of the Rings fan, you just go do it. It's worth your time.
So
It's
worth
not
your
really
time.
worth your time,
It is.
but it's a nice, it's nice brevity. There's some good memes. There's some raging other denominations there.
Oh yeah.
And so like they will try to express theology through meme, which is a great Postman thing. Like the medium is the message. Like, why are you trying to communicate theology through a meme? That's dumb. So like if you're willing to do that, then I can rip it to shreds because that's a failure of communication.
Yep.
Anyway,
The theological squabbles are almost worth
it's
the
so
page
funny.
alone,
Like-
distinct from the memes.
yeah, like you don't understand us. Well, you don't understand us. Well, you don't understand this. You don't, and it's like
You're speaking in memes.
it's like, but like there's like common digs all over the place. Which like there was one the other day. It was something to the effect of like Catholics going to the Bible to find support for infant baptism, and there was none. And it was just like one of those types of things, and it's just like, and then like you look at the comments, it's like, whoa, and it's like, well, okay. Anyway, you went and did it. So I did see a meme on there that was like, Dad said Lord of the Rings is a Christmas movie. Well, why? Because it has elves in it. And so like kind of dad jokey Lord of the Rings. So I have here with a question mark, Lord of the Rings? But I mentioned Lord of the Rings last year. I did mention Short Stories of O. Henry again last year. So I'm not going to mention Lord of the Rings. So that the only book I'm going to repeat is the Short Stories of O. Henry. Lord of the Rings, it's not a Christmas recommendation for me right now. So we're going to move on to, I've mentioned this book, I think.
I loved how he recommended Lord of the Rings as a Christmas read without recommending it as
Yeah.
a
No,
Christmas
I
read.
officially did not. I did
It's,
last year.
it's
but I
like
did
in a
not.
court case where they submit evidence and they're like, you can't do that. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. I withdraw it, but they already did.
Yeah,
They already
jury-
did it.
Yeah, jury's come back. I'm guilty. Anyway,
That
and
was
you,
so
and you
good.
know why? Trees. There are trees.
That's right.
Like Christmas has trees. Anyway,
And elves.
so there are elves. It's a Christmas story.
Horrendous.
I just thought of something.
Gimli has a
Remind me.
very Santa-like
He
figure.
does. He does.
Anyway, so the book, I've mentioned it a couple of times by Leif Unger, to say it how Dr. Puddleglum would say it.
Dr. Puddleglum, that's so good.
And I'm going to call him Dr. P from now on. I think that's hilarious. Well, unless he tells me not to. Josh, if you're listening this deep and you're like deep on the episode, like this long, and you hear this, just tell me to stop. But anyway, so Dr. Puddleglum, he told me it was Leif Unger, and yeah, the book the book is great, and some of the things it exalts will be very good for you to read and have your affection stirred toward for Christmas. Like it's going to remind you of the value and appreciate family and siblings and parents and just kind of the love of some of those things. There is actually a scene in the beginning of the book that takes place at Christmas, and a lot of things happen to this family that are negative, and I won't give any of them away, but they kind of are circulating with some negative things around Christmas, and then how that kind of comes together. It's a cool Christmassy scene in the book. So I just the book will get you in the Christmas spirit. I'll just say that. Like it'll get you ready to be thankful and to be around family and to be content with some of those things. I think I can't. Dr. P over here when he was here, what did he say about it? Trying to remember the wording that Dr. Boyd mentioned. It's just excellently written,
Yeah.
and that kind of discussion we had a while back of you can have a good book with bad philosophy, you can have a bad book with good philosophy, you can have a bad book with bad philosophy, and a good book with good philosophy. Those are the 4 categories. This is a really good, artistically written book with pretty good virtue and philosophy behind it. So on that scale of where we would rank a book, it would have to be high because I think it's done very well. And so yeah, pick up a copy. If you don't have this in the bookstore, you should get some copies.
It's a textbook, so I've
Oh, it is for Dr.
Dr.
Boyd.
Boyd, yeah. So
That's awesome.
I've had to pick it up. I can't remember if it's there right now, but yeah,
But
we've
yeah,
had it.
it's worth. It's a 300 page ish something in there, and at first it kind of does start a little slow. But then once you get into the story, you are captivated in a number of ways with a number of different kind of tributaries of the narrative of how they will resolve. And man, it's just good. It's just good. There's good storytelling
Yeah.
and good writing, good virtue.
Hmm.
If you can pick up a copy of Peace Like a River by Leif Unger and read it over Christmas time, it'll be worth the
Hmm.
investment.
Yeah, we have it in stock unless somebody buys it in 1 week from when this airs.
Be that one.
Well, you-
You be the reason why Tim has to order more of that book. Go buy it. Anyway,
So for my third book,
have I done 3? I've done 3.
I
Yeah.
think that's
I
your
thought it was my turn.
Well,
No,
no,
we're going clockwise.
now we're back to clockwise.
The time changes are all over, Tim. Come on, get with the program. So for my third book, you might think I'm going to do the Book of 3 from the Prydain Chronicles, but I don't actually have that yet. I've ordered it and it's coming, so I can't recommend that yet.
Oh, those are good too.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I had it. It was a well. Anyways, I was kidding.
I have those all on audiobook, and I think I've listened through them like 2 or 3 times now.
Are they better reading or listening? Because I know
Um,
sometimes the narrative with the narrator.
It's always better to read it.
Okay. Oh yeah, you could never say that.
I mean, the narrator does a good job with the whatever ones popped up on Audible.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, I'm excited. It's coming. But so I'm not going to recommend that one. But instead, I'm going to take you.
I like not recommending, but recommending. That's fun.
You did it. It was so fun. I'll do it too. This sounds
Oh,
good.
brother.
Drug.
So I'm going to take you across a frozen lake on our trip to this next book. We're going to pass a rock bridge, and we're going to go through a forest called the Western Woods. And then we're going to approach a beaver dam, and we're going to have to go over that and around through this wasted area. And then what will you see at that point? You will see a lamppost. And if you look
Goats.
past the lamppost, oh yeah, you'll see goats. You'll see a wardrobe in the middle of a forest. So for the third book, I'm going to recommend The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Mostly because I believe Charlie recommended these last Christmas episode. And I don't think you could, if you've never read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's a perfect Christmas story. Because it's a land where it's always winter and never Christmas. So if you've not read the Chronicles of Narnia, this might be the year to try The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
That's my third recommendation, and it's straight Christmas, so I don't think I have to like do much about it. So it's a Lewis book. I think we always need to have a Lewis book at Christmas. There you go, Tim. That's it. Short, sweet.
It's
we're done.
also a gateway drug.
Yeah, exactly, and it's attainable. It's easy. It's a kid's book. I mean, come on, don't be intimidated. Pick it up, read it.
We're going to
It's
go
wonderful.
see The Wardrobe in a couple of days, Lord willing.
See it? Oh, the movie.
No, like we're going to the Wade Center on our way to New York.
Oh, the real. Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
Take selfies. Send them to us. Take pictures.
My one
Climb
son
in.
yesterday was like, I wanted to go into the wardrobe. I'm like, son, they're not going to let you into the wardrobe. You're not going into it.
Unless you're really fast.
Distractions.
We're not getting in the wardrobe.
It's like, hey, let's play hide and go seek. But what's the number one rule? Number one rule.
Of hide and seek?
Yeah.
Hide?
Don't close the door.
Don't lock
and get
yourself
locked
in.
into the wardrobe.
yeah. Sorry. Oh, I'm ashamed. I didn't know that.
Anyway, so whose turn is it?
It's
Mine.
Tim's. Because we're off the time changes.
Yes.
Let's see here. So is this my last book? This is my last one.
I don't know.
I've got one more after this, so I don't know. what
I
you
have
got.
another one as well.
Okay, I can come up with another one. Anyway, the one I have here now is Ordinary by Michael Horton. Sustainable Faith in a Radical Restless World.
Ooh, that looked really good. I wanted to read that, and I fully agree with the title.
So this was written really kind of in response to Radical by, was that Platt?
David Platt.
By
Yep.
David Platt.
It was like took the world by storm.
Right. So there is a component where you have zeal for the Lord, okay? And you need to be radical, all right? But his book, Radical, was a huge hit, 10, 15 years ago? And we still sell it in the bookstore, and it does have some value. However, our world, our culture is all about this, I'll use the word zeal, but what Horton argues is that actually life, particularly the Christian life, is about faithfulness and this continuance and this
Amen.
endurance. It is not a sprint, it is a marathon. And the idea that of Radical by David Platt, one of the issues with it is that it put a lot of people into a sprint. And so they go and they blast out of the gate. But then, of course, like a sprint, you run out of steam. And so Horton, he kind of caveats it on several points, because the issue with saying that the Christian life is supposed to be ordinary is that people are going to be like, oh yeah, well, I'm just ordinary, when really they're lazy, when really they are comfortable. And so he talks about that. There is a difference between an idol of comfort and genuine biblical contentment. And we've talked about that on this podcast. Stearns had an entire episode on his contentment series about how you should be discontent with contentment. So, but anyway, I would recommend reading Ordinary by Michael Horton. And then personally, as I've considered even discipleship and discipling young men, a lot of times what we want when we are working with something is we want something radical. But really what ends up happening, and this is where if you are discipling somebody, what you have to realize is that often it's not something radical. It's usually something very ordinary. And through the faithful, persevering effort of you, a pastor, a mentor, a deacon, or whatever role that you have, as you seek to lead people in the walk of faith, is that it's very slow. Because in truth, sometimes you have somebody that's like radical, but a lot of times, most of the time, it's very ordinary. It's very slow.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. Like, you kind of took, like, applying that to the person who's doing the discipleship, recognizing the slowness of it. I think it's just as valuable for us personally to recognize what I used to say all the time is you're not going to repent and then wake up tomorrow, and I'll use the term, and be radically different. You're actually going to feel and look and probably act exactly the same. And you're going to have to grapple with the desires of what you've done for years. Again, the next day and the next day and the next day. And you're not going to see change from Monday to Tuesday. But the goal isn't, the scope of sanctification isn't Monday to Tuesday, it's eternity. And hopefully over a year, 3 years, 5 years. Pastor Saucer used to always quip. I asked him, how long does it take to like disciple someone? Like where they get it, where they're really, not that they're perfect, but like they're taking active steps of sanctification kind of on their own. Like they've become a wise, mature believer. How long does that take? And he's like, 2 to 10 years.
That's so great.
And I'm like, what do you mean 2 to 10? He's like, well, you got to pour a lot of years into those people. And that's like weekly or bi-weekly meetings with someone for like 2 or 3 years. And then maybe they click. And he's like, but sometimes you'll put like 5 years into someone. And this is pastors listening, be encouraged. Like, don't lose heart.
Yeah.
But you can pour 5 years into someone and then they walk away just like that, but 2 to 10 years. And it's like, yeah, well, I repented yesterday and nothing's different today. What's wrong? Nothing. Just keep repenting. And 10 years from now, you are still going to be sinful, but hopefully God has developed your character and you can, looking back, hindsight's 2020, you can look back, I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. I am different. And it doesn't mean I don't struggle, but I'm thankful in some of my struggles that I can look back and like, man, I was an idiot. Still am, by the way. But I can say thankfully and praise and boast in the cross and in the grace of God.
Amen.
That I'm not the same person I was even just 3 or 4 years ago. And that's God working in your heart. And so like it's just the daily ordinary steps of faith. It's not anything, it's not a huge big thing,
Pastor Sean Lundberg at Community Local Church here was preaching in chapel like a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. And I walk in and some dude walks up, one of the students hands me $1, and everyone in the chapel he had handed $1 to. And a lot of people refused the dollars. And I remember thinking, this is weird. What's he going to have us do with the $1? And the point of his message was, what would you do if you saved $1 today? And you'd think it's nothing important. And so it was this extended illustration that he used as he preached. I can't remember the passage he was in, but his point was, you do little things daily and you're faithful to little things, and over time it adds up. He says a lot of times in your life, you're faced with a spiritual decision and it doesn't seem significant, so it doesn't seem that important. And what I appreciated, and I'm not trying to pick at anyone else, but sometimes you'll have a speaker who will come in and wants to get a big effect, and so they really ram it down like hard. And as a listener, you can walk away like what we're talking about here thinking, the parts of my life spiritually that matter are those mountaintop, really, like you said, radical, significant steps. And Pastor Sean said multiple times, he said, the thing that matters is the daily, day in and day out, mundane faithfulness. I think that's what he called it, mundane faithfulness. It was basically like a synonym for ordinary.
Yep.
And I was very, very thankful for that. So
On page 69, he references Lewis's Screwtape Letters. I'm going to read this. In his Screwtape Letters, C.S. Lewis has the veteran demon tell his apprentice that the horror of the same old thing is one of the most valuable passions we have produced in the human heart. The discussion follows about how fashion, novelty, and change will certainly produce an insatiable desire for, ironically, more of the same. This demand is valuable in various ways, he's quoting Lewis now. In the first place, it diminishes pleasures while increasing desire. The pleasure of novelty is by its very nature more subject than any other to the law of diminishing returns. And so, as we wrap up a year, one thing that I personally found helpful, and I would encourage you to do, is in the ordinary affairs of your life, look at your life this last year, and do you see growth? I pray that you do. And if you don't, then I would strongly encourage you to do something so that you do see growth and grow this next year, even if it's just a little bit. Grow.
And once you think about that, we can't have the discussion now. How would you even begin to measure that?
Well, that's where, again, don't get me started. That's like where you get into all of this creating, people are machines and we have to create. That's something that we fight all the time at an academic institution that's involved constantly in accreditation and evaluation and blah, 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 blah. And it just sometimes makes me want to puke because you can't measure this, especially when after
Yeah.
5 years, the person walks away from the Lord, like you just said with
Yeah.
your pastor. And, you're investing in 5 years. Well, from an evaluation perspective, well, he left the faith. So what do we need to do? We need to figure out why that happened and then change
Yeah.
so that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and,
Well,
and that's the
you're
problem.
dealing with people, okay? And
Yep.
so this is what the message of Ecclesiastes is, such a strong message, okay? You can't create a machine so that A plus or 2 plus 2 equals 4, because we're not dealing with a machine, we're dealing with people.
Yep.
That's why
Yep.
people are like, I want to marry somebody, and I want to make sure I marry right because I don't want them to leave me. Well, you can't guarantee that. Anybody who thinks that they can, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
Okay, people are not machines, and somebody
Well, and I
could
think,
always abandon you.
and kind of be careful here, because I don't want to point a finger at someone or a certain ministry or anything like that. So like I don't have anyone specific in my mind. But that consumeristic idea gets applied to discipleship, and they see people who have succeeded in training. And it's not that they succeeded, it's that God gave increase. And all it is 2 Corinthians 4, the simple proclamation of the word and the Spirit of God and a willing heart, and boom, there's growth. And then all of a sudden, well, we need to do that again. Like, we need you to do that here and there. And you can't manufacture it. You cannot. And you cannot manipulate you can't manipulate faith in a person. You can't manipulate God to do things by your
Exactly.
faith.
When you're wanting to look at it that way, you're literally trying to manipulate God and manipulate the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
So then you can produce something. So then you get the praise.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't work that way.
And you know what's
Anyway,
interesting is, I'll just harken back to my student life days, and then we'll get back on our Christmas book trip here. There was a lot of times in counseling college guys here at Faith where and they would laugh at me because I would use the same phrases over and over and over again. And you're like, okay, just the teaching is good? Like, yeah, that works. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you just walk through the outline of the things you've said, literally probably hundreds of times. And why does it work with one and not work with another? And there are times when you're like, man, I told you that. Like, I mean, there are times I can. There's a guy that comes to my mind, and if he's listening to this and he hears this, I love you. I'm not going to name names, but there's a guy who something happens when you disciple guys regularly and they're caught in sin. They will shy away from you, and they'll try to save face with you, but they'll keep the facade of growth. Like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I just can't come today. Like, I'm busy. Like, oh, I forgot. Like, oh man, I just had homework and I just couldn't do it. Like 100,000 excuses. And this guy had done that for a couple of months, and finally got together with this guy, and we're sitting in a coffee shop, and I could just feel the presence was off. And I just asked, I was like, hey, are you okay? Like, tell me what's going on. And just that question, I think, prompted his will, and it broke, just cracked for a moment. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm very upset with what God has done in my life, and I don't know what to do about it. And I don't want to go to church. I don't want to go to Bible study. I don't want to, do these things anymore because I'm upset. And in those moments, what you say is really important. You have to speak truth, but you have to speak it in love. So how do you do that? And I can remember telling the student, just, hey, I love you. I understand that, but you have to be careful. Those are desires at work in your heart now. And if you don't deal with those now, I know where they will take you. It will lead you to further sin. It's not just wrong to have a desire in you. Like, the point is, in faith, denying yourself and choosing
Mm.
to follow after Christ.
Mm.
It's not the presence of every wrong thing that, and you're justified by Christ completely. It's like he knows you have sin in your heart. It's like, don't worry about it. I mean, I don't want to say don't worry about it, but you
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying? Like in
Okay, yeah.
context.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
like if you leave those things unchecked, like you just, cars don't drive themselves. Well, Teslas do now. But anyway, you just, you put the car on autopilot, take your hands off the wheel, and you're like, Jesus, take the wheel. You're gonna crash. Okay. And I feel like sometimes Christians get frustrated. This student was frustrated. This is the way I'm feeling. God, solve the problem. Hands off the wheel. But at that point, you already know what the problem is. Your flesh is being drawn away and enticed. And I warned him. I'm like, hey, if you don't deal with this now, it will lead you to the world. And I got a phone call 3 days later. He was in prison. Made some really rough decisions. Got caught. And in that moment, you're like, but I told you. But that's the thing.
Ugh.
I can't, you can't, we can't just manipulate. Like, well, he heard it. So, and the point, the teaching alone, just the rote memory, the knowledge of the fact doesn't change a heart.
Right.
They have to respond to the truth.
Mhm.
And it is an act of submission where you let the Spirit of God rule in your heart. And you can choose to do that. You can choose not to do that. And so, but you can say the same things over and over and over again. Why does it work with one and it doesn't work with another? If you could figure that out, you'd be a rich person because you could manufacture character, and you can't.
And you can't figure it out because that's not the way that God designed it.
Who knows? Who knows these things? Anyway, whew, man, that was a way to go over the hour mark, wasn't it? How about we get back to our books now?
Worth it.
Yeah.
That was good.
I mean, that's ultimately, so, kind of like self-abase here for a moment. You can't manipulate or manufacture, but there are things you can't control, but there are things you can control. That makes sense?
That's why it's shepherding.
Yeah.
That's why the wise man, the sage in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, he orders truth so that they are goads to guide. But it doesn't matter if you're goading, an ox, the sucker still might just run off
Yeah.
into whatever.
Well,
But that's where the teaching philosophy of education is all, the person still has to obey the goad and stay on the path.
Yeah, well, I was even thinking what can you control, or what should you be mindful of, and more on a personal level, is I can identify when I am causing restraint or grief to the Spirit of God. It's like if I know of something that's happening in maybe my desires or something I'm loving, maybe it's like an attitude, an emotion that's kind of drawing me to go away, or I'm thinking certain things over and over again. And the emphasis is internal, but you can see it on the outside too. If there's things I know that are representative of the flesh and what is contrary to the flesh, the spirit.
Right.
And so if I want change and that's the spirit and he does that, what can I control? I can try to remove fleshly influence, and I can identify that in my patterns of life and turn from them. And so you can't manipulate that, but you can manage that. You can daily, I think this is what devotion should look like. When you sit down with the Word of God, you should be asking yourself, are there things in my life that are
Pulling me.
Am I
Drawing
yielding to
me.
the spirit or yielding to the flesh so that the spirit can't do its work? And so when you get into a discussion of monergism or synergism with sanctification, I would say I am a synergist. But the only thing I need to do is let him do. And once you get to the point where you're yep, okay, then you're no longer synergistic. He's empowering the ship at that point. But you are doing it together in that sense. But anyway, you can't manufacture it. But here I am trying to write a book to manufacture it,
Right.
to
But
help someone.
No, you're not manufacturing. You're guiding. Okay. You're
Yeah.
the goading and you're seeking to be the faithful preacher, teacher, guider, assembler of wisdom,
Yeah.
that comes from the one shepherd. It's Ecclesiastes 12. So it's
Fear God and keep the commands,
that's
baby.
it. Do it.
So for the listener's sake, I'm just going to ask you some questions. Yes, no. So Charlie, do you remember before the episode when we planned to have a talk about discipleship?
Yes.
Really? For this
Well,
Christmas episode?
not this episode.
No. For this episode, do you remember when we planned that out?
We did not.
No. Tim, do you remember when we planned to have you bring this book to talk about this so we could talk about discipleship?
Mhm. I think I picked this book like 30 minutes before we started the recording.
So on evidence, we did not plan this. So listener,
Christmas.
it's one, 2 miracles. No, I was just going to say,
It's horrendous.
listener, this is how it goes. You read books and you develop your soul and you meet with your friends and you talk about it. And then what happens? This kind of thing happens and
Yep.
everyone's edified. So this is just one more plug that you need to be doing this on your own with your own friends. And it will be
Amen.
very,
Yeah.
very good for your soul. Very good.
And it is interesting that we have been circulating these topics for a couple of weeks now, and we haven't quite landed yet. And I feel like that was good.
That was
So-
really good. That was really good.
So anyway, my last book.
Come on. We're waiting for one of your Charlie Carter famous segues right now. From that to your book. Come on. Give it to us. Oh, you're on the spot. Now you're going to be like Tim
Oh,
Little, right?
no.
It's just gotta happen. You know?
Okay. See, Tim, we
Mine,
can't just
mine
manufacture it.
happened. Mine happened.
Oh my god.
I just start talking about whatever's next.
So my book is The Sign of the Beaver.
Yeah, that was totally a Tim Little segue right there.
Yeah. So
I love my
Uh,
segues.
a little background on this book. So
like a really
I
pretty
think
car wreck.
I think I've mentioned books by Elizabeth George Spear previously. Maybe.
It sounds vaguely
I
familiar.
can't remember if I've talked about Witch of Blackbird Pond
Yes. Yeah.
or
Was
I know we've talked
Out
about
of your
them.
left field? One of
No,
those?
it wasn't
No? Okay.
that. Because I've read all of these this fall, but
I think you
I know I've
off
mentioned
air.
because
Yeah.
she's one of the few children's authors to have won multiple Newbery Awards. I feel like we've talked about that on the air before.
Mhm.
But so The Sign of the Beaver is one of her children's books, and it's about like a homesteading family. And I can't remember. It's kind of in the. I'm getting the books mixed up. I don't know if it's like pre-Revolution or Civil War era. I can't remember, but it's early America type of a thing, and it's like like the dad brings the son, and then the dad is now going to leave and go get his pregnant wife and daughter and bring them back to the cabin they've just built, and the goal is to get back before winter, like get back before this young boy is by himself, and spoils. He doesn't get back. The dad doesn't get back when they think he's going to get back. And so here's this young boy in the woods, by himself, more or less. And he starts interacting with, there's just not a good term to describe the people that were on this continent before the European white influence people came. Native Americans is a term we would use, but it's anachronistic because they were here before Amerigo Vespucci discovered the continent. It wasn't Christopher Columbus. And so to call them Native Americans is to ascribe a term
Stop.
later in
Just
history
keep
to people
going.
who
I
were
think
here earlier in history.
Isn't it indigenous peoples? Is that the
Yeah, that's a way to
technical
say it.
term?
Yeah.
You're right though. There's some
Yeah,
agreed
but
upon
Native
term.
American is a very common term for them.
Yep.
I'm okay with it. It's anachronistic though. So just anyway, words are fun. So so he starts interacting with some Native Americans. Tim was loving this. So what happens in all of Spear's books that I've read, at some point there's someone teaching someone else how to read. Everyone. And in this one, there's like a trade of sorts that takes place where this young native is to teach the young boy how to survive because he's by himself. And the young boy is going to teach the native how to read and write English so that as he grows up in his tribe, he can interact with the white people. And that's kind of the trade. And what ends up happening is at first, obviously, there's a language barrier. The young native does not like the boy, and they grow in friendship. They grow in virtue. And it's kind of a fun little tale of the merging of cultures, and it makes you think about some things that have happened in our nation's past and analyze them. I think a lot of things have been done under the, I won't say in the name of, but under the guise of religion and Christianity, that if we really put an analytical eye on, you would be very, very hard pressed to find virtue there. For example, and I can't. Do I want to, for example, this?
No.
I kind of do though. Just so, what's the greatest tragedy in like modern history? What would you say?
No idea.
Where millions of
modern
people were
history?
killed.
Probably communistic something or another.
Yeah.
Wasn't
They
there like a really
annihilated-
famous one? Where there's
The
like
Holocaust?
a world war fought. Yeah, the Holocaust, where
Wow.
famously there's like 6 million Jewish people. And now
Yep.
the Jewish people, it's God's people. That's a different. I don't want to get into that discussion, but recognizing what the settlers, the cute little pilgrims did to the natives of this country, and in the name of like Western enterprise and capitalism, 6 million would, I don't even know if that's accurate. I think it might be more than that of natives that our ancestors here. But I don't think we have to, pay for the sins of our forefathers in that sense, and get into reparation talk. But that I do think that dilemma is just kind of brought up, like the interaction of the natives and the settlers in that book. And if you've never read into that, it does kind of strike your heart in a sense. I think she's not being political with the book. It's a children's story. It's a boyhood coming of age story. He's learning things about another culture. He's becoming friends with people that he wasn't friendly with to begin with. But it kind of skirts on some of those themes. And what I really liked about it is a very outdoorsy thing. What the sign of the beaver is, the title, is it's a sign that the natives would put on trees of where like this is someone else's trapping ground. And so it's actually like this virtue thing. Like nobody's here watching you, but you're not supposed to trap that river. And this like the native telling that to the kid who's here because these people came and just portioned out the land and bought it that never really belonged to them. And so this kid is learning how the natives decide whose territory is what. We don't own it, but this is where he goes. This is that tribe. And the native is teaching the white boy about that, who's come and settled on land that's now his. You catch the tension? And this
Yeah.
boy, without his father, is being taught these principles of virtue from the native boy and from the tribe. And it's just an interesting story where like he's learning virtue from people that in the age would have been thought were
Well,
virtueless.
barbarians, yeah.
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 And so it's a great story. Great
Savages, as they would have been called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and to be fair to Spear, there's another book where she does depict them more so like that. But it's just an interesting story. It's but it's outdoorsy, kind of that feel to it. Young boy in the wilderness learning how to hunt. And that, so kind of bootstrap mentality a little bit. And so I grew up, dad was a farmer. I grew up fishing, hunting. That's like kind of appealed to me right away. But then once you you try to think through the themes of the character development, it's a good story. It's a good story. I don't think this was one of her Newbery ones. But my phone is buzzing. Apple Watches are
I
really
know.
nice.
They're
You just
so
like,
nice.
Nope. Joey, if you ever listen to this, you were trying to call me, and I'm sorry, I just hung up on you. So, Sign of the Beaver.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite like Liver Eating Johnson from last summer. That was way, way left field. This
Crow
is
Killer? Is that what
Crow Killer. Yeah.
That was-
I never
I
called him.
so-
I never called him that, did I?
Oh, okay. I
Maybe
totally
it-
want to read that.
Well, he was known for eating the livers out of his
Yeah. See.
opponents. We'll just
Okay.
stop it there.
All right.
Liver Eating Johnson. Who knows if it was a mythological tale about him that he did once, and then it was like, oh, he did this with hundreds, or if it was. But that's the beauty of the story, though. Is like you're like, yeah, like the Western hero, larger than life, Paul Bunyan-esque, Anyway, but so Sign of the Beaver, I would say for parents with young boys, I mean, not to segregate by gender, but I mean, the main character is a young boy, and then the next character to the side of him is another young boy, and it's another young boy of a vastly different background. And so it could spur, we're just talking about discipleship. It could maybe encourage a discussion about how do you learn and interact with people who are not like you
Hmm.
in the right way. Like, how do you, to be friendly and to love people, and that virtue doesn't have a color or a geography attached to it. Anyway, so maybe it's something you get for a young boy, maybe young girl too. But if you want one for a young girl, there's other Spear books that the young girl is the main character, but like The Witch of Blackbird Pond.
So I think I'm the last book, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you went
Okay.
daylight savings time on us, Tim. So okay, so the final book then for our Chronicles of Christmas episode 2 or part 2, I'm gonna pick a classic, and I don't even know how to tie this to Christmas other than
I'll help you.
okay, yeah, Charlie, be here for me. This is a book by Ed Welch called "When People Are Big and God Is Small: Overcoming Peer Pressure, Codependency, and the Fear of Man." How are you gonna do this, Charlie? I'll just start talking about it. You tell me when you get the Christmas connection.
Yeah.
This book was huge. I have not read this in a long time, and I think that I'm going to try to reread this in the next, hopefully, year. So if you've grown up in a psychological self-esteem context and you've lived for self-esteem and you've seen the bankruptcy of that, this book, and even if you just fear other people and you want them to like you, okay, if you're anywhere in that spectrum, this book is for you. What Ed Welch is going to walk you through is what it is like when you live for the fear of other people's opinions of you, your reputation. The fear of man is what Scripture calls it. And then he's going to walk you through the fear of the Lord. And so the first part of the book is how and why we fear others. And so he walks you through what people see, the rejection, how you want their praise, that sort of thing in a sinful way. And then the second part is overcoming the fear of other people. And he starts off in that section with knowing the fear of the Lord and growing in the fear of the Lord. Then he walks through a whole bunch of stuff. He talks about felt needs, which in our therapeutic culture, that's going to be a very helpful chapter. And then he ends with chapter 13 is the conclusion of the matter: fear God and keep his commandments. And so I love this book. In fact, I love it so much that I actually have a signed copy. When Dr. Newman was doing his doctorate out there, he got Ed, who was his reader on his dissertation, to sign it, and so I have a signed copy. It's
So the
pretty
author
awesome.
is
Ed
Ed
Welch. Yep.
If you go and Google Ed Welch, Google tells me that there are certain people related, not related
This is
biologically, but
horrendous.
related in theme. The first one, Andy.
Oh boy.
Oh,
Just
boy.
take a
upset.
step. You of all
I
people.
would imagine David Pallison.
He's not mentioned.
Okay.
You of all people
Oh,
would know
no.
this name.
Oh no.
Santa Claus.
I don't know.
The cost. Oh,
Oh no. Shh. Don't speak the name. No, don't say Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
it is. So,
oh, come on.
but there's a whole bunch of others that are better than Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
You don't have to cover your mouth when you say that.
Yeah,
You can
so
just say
there's
it loud and
Ed
proud.
Welch, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Tim Keller, Charles Spurgeon, John Piper, C.S. Lewis, and Paul David Tripp.
Wow.
And so here's the connection to Christmas. When I was like, my first thought was, oh yeah, this is the guy with the big mustache. But no, that's
No,
not
it's-
Ed Welch. That's Tripp.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to use it anyway. Ed Welch is seemingly clean shaven.
He is. He's always been that way.
But Paul Tripp has a big bushy mustache, like Santa's got a big bushy beard.
There you go.
And they're related, apparently, according to Google.
Actually, that reminds me, I was going to tell the listener, if you think of the biblical counseling movement, it starts off, in my mind, with basically, I know there could have been people before, but Jay Adams is the guy who, on the scene, develops everything. He takes the church and kind of pulls it back very forcefully and aggressively from this living in the world of psychology. And that's almost like the first wave of biblical counseling. Wave number 2, when I think of it, is Pallison, Welch, and Tripp. And they're the CCEF crew, and Tripp is in there. And now Tripp goes off on his
So
own.
the second wave
That would be like, I would say like the
and
second.
the third wave.
What?
is Dr. Jeff Newman.
That's right. He's
Yeah.
the dispensational wave.
Good to clarify, because when you ever talk about other waves
Yeah.
of theology, sometimes,
It gets a little Pentecostal. So
yeah,
hooping and
crazy.
hollering. So, but I would say that if you've not read this book, it'd be a great book for your soul over the Christmas season, and it would be a great book for you in how you interact with other people.
Yeah. Okay. So that is an hour and 20 minutes. So I got that right?
Yep.
We
There's a
wanna
lot
make
of good bonus
You
content
just
in
want to
there.
go to hour and a half? Just
Not if we
round it
want to
up?
get more recording done today.
I mean, what did we do in the last Christmas episode?
Oh,
that we
this
didn't
was
do
good.
one? Do you remember anything?
Don't prolong it unnecessarily.
Tim wants to put it out of
no,
its.
there it is. We did not talk about
The Song of Songs. You're right. You want me to?
food in the Thanksgiving
we
episode.
didn't. We got to talk about food. Let's talk about
Oh.
Christmas food we're excited about.
Okay,
Oh, poor
favorite
Tim.
Christmas food. My mom called me the other day and
Okay.
told me that she has made pumpkin and pecan pie
Oh,
for Christmas, which I'm really
Ooh.
excited for. There was no pecan pie at Thanksgiving, but she's like, I'll make one for Christmas. I'm excited for that.
so my brother built a smoker 2 or 3 years ago. His own custom smoker,
Nice.
like welded it with sheet metal, steel wool to insulate it. He's got a thing in there to control the burn rate.
Oh, yeah.
And so now at Christmas or Thanksgiving, one of my favorite things is he smokes brisket.
Mm.
Oh, it's like the fat melts in your mouth. It's smoky. You got the like crust or the bark, as they call it. Oh,
I
and then
know
the
that
other
There's going to
favorite,
be someone that emails in and is like, why are you making that little chipmunk sound? That's horrible.
it's eating.
It's
It's
me eating the
eating
brisket.
and enjoying it. And then the other thing I would say is my wife makes a cranberry apple pie. It is
Ooh.
the best. I love pumpkin. I love chocolate pecan. I love she made French silk at Thanksgiving. She made 4 pies. But the cranberry apple, which I didn't think I'd like that much,
Cran apple.
was the best. Oh, it was so good. So those are the 2 things I'm really excited about.
So when this airs, I should be back in New York, in the house that I grew up in as a kid. And so I'll probably be enjoying some of the Christmas treats that I enjoyed growing up. And I like to bake. So I will probably be baking some of them.
Ooh,
What are these Christmas treats,
Yeah,
Tim?
what are you going to bake? Tell us about this.
My favorite Christmas treat is probably the chocolate covered cherry cookies.
Chocolate covered cherry cookies?
So it's a chocolate cookie, and you put
Maraschino.
maraschino cherry on the top, and you make a chocolate cherry kind of sauce thing,
And you dip them.
and you put some on the top of the cookie, and then you bake it.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're pretty rich, but they're probably my favorite
Pretty bougie, as my roommate would say.
Christmas dessert.
Wow. Tim, you have sold me on this. So that means the next time we record in January, you have to make us some of the bougie cookies.
Yeah, that's okay.
My father-in-law
Uh,
requests them for every New Year's, Christmas with the capons celebration. So that's probably the top one for the cookies, and then we'll probably be making some breads and some other stuff. It'll be a fun time. I'm looking forward to it.
do you guys have the dreaded treat table at your locations for Christmas? Like when we go to Michigan, which we will, Robin's mom always has a little card table
Yeah.
in her kitchen, and she makes the M&M or the like pretzels with the Hershey Kiss and the M&M.
The
and
Rudolphs.
it's just all the junk food at the table.
I made those.
Oh yeah.
So did I mention on this episode? No, that was last week where I talked about that white elephant gift exchange. I actually made those little Rudolph things, and I tried to get a package of M&Ms that were just red or green, like
Ooh.
Christmas ones, and I
Ah.
couldn't. So I just got a regular bag, and I picked out I washed my hands first.
Of course.
Then I picked out all the red and green and made these Rudolphs with the pretzels and the Rolos, and and I actually got icing, and I made
Rolos.
you get a pretzel, and then
Oh.
you put a Rolo on the middle. and
We
you-
always use Hershey
you go
Kisses.
300 degrees for like 3 or 4 minutes, so they just start to melt,
Yeah.
and then you put 'em, and then you put the M&M on top, and then I even broke off pretzel pizzas and like put antlers into the Rolo, and then I got it was for an engagement party, so I kind of went all out for my buddy here.
That
But
was awesome, by
I
the way.
got some icing, and I made little eyeballs on all of them.
Whoa.
So they're like awesome. But then I'm like, what do I do with all the blue and brown and yellow and orange
Green,
M&Ms?
yeah.
I gave them as a white elephant gift.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I put them in a little. I got a little saran and I like bagged them up and I squished them into an old AirPods box and then wrapped it so like they opened it. It was like AirPods, a bag of M&Ms, but not just any M&Ms. There are no red or green ones there.
You know, the ones that taste the best are the blue.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely the blue are unrivaled.
Yay.
Anyway, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Do you want to end the episode with a song, Tim?
No, I'm good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Thinklings podcast. We would love to hear from you. If you have any feedback, suggestions, or potential topics that you'd like us to discuss, you can contact us through our email, thinklingspodcast@gmail.com. Remember, don't let this conversation end with this podcast. Read good books, talk about them with your friends, and always continue to cultivate your mind. See you next time on the Thinklings podcast.